patient community clinics, no DCT, none of this whatever. That's not what they bought.
So I have a thing. I got the guy who wrote the DCT guidance to actually come onto my podcast. So I'm interviewing him next week.
Who is it? Craig?
What's that?
Craig Lipset?
No, it's not Craig. It's not Craig.
I wouldn't be surprised if it was.
Like, he doesn't work for the FDA, so I would be.
Oh, so you have to be an employee. See, we did an hour long on this. I'm still not clear. So
which part? Oh, tell me more.
The FDA. So you have to write the guidance. You have to be FDA, but they allow anyone to submit. What is it called? Like
comments.
Okay.
Yeah.
Comments. All right.
His name.
Yeah, 300 million.
He's one of the many people. It's not like some guy write the guidance alone. Mm-hmm. But the guy I'm going to be interviewing is a guy called Isaac Rodriguez Chavez.
Oh, nice. Okay. All right. That's awesome. So people can tune in at your podcast.
Yes, I'm not gonna do a live one. I'm gonna do it as a recording, which is next week. I'll try to put it out sooner. I think I'm actually I have podcasts scheduled to like September or October right now.
You're a beast.
Dude,
Are you charging? How much you're charging to get on your pod?
Zero. So far, it's been
zero. Amazing. What? Zero? You haven't turned into Magi yet?
No, not yet. I got to learn from the Safari method. I believe you have a book coming out on this.
No, free. But look, Fraud Pod. People are tuning in. They're like, what's the Fraud Pod? Darshan, in our last live, we had this like spontaneous idea that's, hey, why don't we call something Fraud Pod, talk about fraud? You've already been doing this.
I have.
So we're going to feature this on your existing show. Yep. I'll come on here and there, but you're going to do Fraud Pod. And what do you plan to do with this?
So my thought process is this. People were interested in talking about fraud and seeing how it all comes together. So we're going to talk, I think, about the types of different types of fraud that are out there, whether we're talking about clinical research, what kinds of issues might pop up, reimbursement issues in the context of clinical research, outside the context of clinical research, pharmacy. We can see that in advertising. Like there were at one point, it was something like $14 billion in fraud-related payments that were paid to the DOJ just from life sciences companies. So those are different issues we can get into. Now, I might make that into a channel that, again, you and I can push out there and we can talk about it. And hopefully it just means more engagement that will feed the T-shirt beast that is Dan Safari.
Why do you think people are so interested in fraud?
I think it's sort of like seeing CSI Miami live.
But do you think people are interested because they want to know the the barometer for where they can't go too far? Or do you think they're interested from like a philosophical perspective of like, what are other people doing? I can't believe it.
See, I think it's more like rubbernecking, which is you drive by an accident and you just want to you just have to stare at the accident.
Yeah, but because it's like the deeper understanding is that could have been me.
Yeah. It could also be there's an element of the Simpsons character. I forget the character's name, where you just point and go, ha ha. Meanwhile, you could very easily be doing the same exact thing.
Right.
And that's the scary part. And you are 100% right that people are looking at these things. And I think for sites, it's become a bigger issue. And I think Fraud Pod might be something we discuss in generalities, but I think we could get into that. That's sort of a amorphous term. I can see us talking a little bit about 483s, a warning letter that went out to a site. What are the findings in that? And how is that different from, say, the last 4 warning letters that went out? Why does it matter? And I think those are some of the conversations we want to get into so that people aren't going, oh, this is easy and this is intuitive, because it rarely is. And I think that's what we want to catch, and that's what we want to show.
Do you think, so you're an attorney and a pharmacist. By the way, it's not legal advice or medical advice. I mean, this.
Thank you.
Imagine that. But you deal with, like, do people call you after they're in trouble and say, hey, Darshan, we're being accused of
all the
fraud?
Time.
All the time.
All the time. I would say it's probably 30% of my business, maybe.
Do you ever not take a case because you're like, nah, dude, you guys just you did it. You're wrong. I don't want to support this.
Well, so what's your first? So here's how it usually works out. Here's what I'm being accused of. Okay, let's see what actually happened, because you don't actually know if they're right or wrong.
Do you need
Sometimes
to know? Do you need to know?
I do, because my experience is one of two things happen. One is the person literally doesn't know that they've committed fraud, if you will, and then you're going, well, there are different types of fraud. What do we need to do to fix it? So the people who are going, I didn't commit fraud, and I don't think I need to fix it. Those are the most problematic to me. If they
Because
did commit fraud
they don't know they did it.
and don't want to fix it.
Is that the most common?
The ones who didn't know that they did it is actually pretty common. Don't want to fix it is incredibly rare.
What about I know I did wrong, let's just clean it up?
Those are my favorite ones.
Your favorite?
Because I know I did, because that means that you acknowledge that there's a mistake. The first step in fixing something is to know that you made a mistake.
Yeah, but only because they got caught. You don't care. You don't judge.
Okay, so it depends on what you mean by that.
You don't judge people.
I don't judge people. That's not my job. They're my favorite from the context of I know that there was a mistake done, not in the context of, oh, I kind of did wrong. That's not okay. I hope that everyone's working from the perspective of I want to do good in life. Things slip through the cracks all the time, but and I can't chase after every possible scenario. But I want to try my best to do right, and sometimes it doesn't work out. And I made a mistake, and now I want to fix it, and that's what I think we're trying to do here.
You can do a whole thing on like 483s, you know, and
oh my god, dude! Think about all the 483s. Think about I don't know. We haven't done this before, but I just did a presentation for a large academic medical institution where I talked about what the FDA has seen in the last 5 years and how investigator-initiated studies versus remote audits versus risk-based audits, how has all that played out over the last 5 years? And the FDA puts all this data out there, and you can look at it.
More fraud in IITs?
There's a lot of fraud in IITs.
That's an issue. Did you see the article like maybe a month ago? The amount of fraud at the AMCs in order to get grants or to get like peer-reviewed journal published to get grants.
Oh yeah, I think you probably clicked on my link.
I might have clicked. You're all over the place, man. Like I probably did. This came out like last month, I think, no, or like a few weeks ago.
There've been at least 3 different articles I can think of on exactly that issue. Did you see yesterday's guidance on informed consent?
I saw about it. I mean, I got comments that in 2019 we wrote about basically the same thing in here, so we were ahead of the curve. So I don't know what they said, but it's good. You're supposed to be doing this already.
Well, so it's not that you shouldn't be getting informed consent. I think if you were doing studies without informed consent, you have a problem. The question is, when should you get informed consent? So that's one of those issues that people continuously struggle with, and I think the guidance tried to add some clarity around that. It's still, there's so many nuances that people like me continue to have a job, because you kind of go, this is how far it goes. From a risk-based perspective, you're taking this one additional step. Are we still in the same ballpark, or have we gone too far? And that's where someone will call me up and go, this is my take on it.
I see. To me, I mean, maybe it's because I just work at small clinics, but it's not like that complicated. Like process of consent, document it, make sure the patient understands, make sure they have time to discuss, make sure they're not coerced, document it all. I mean, it's common
sense. Let's pick one just for argument's sake. Okay. How do you make sure they're not coerced?
You talk to them, you say, there are alternative treatments. This is not treatment. This is research. You'll get excellent care. I guarantee you that, but it's not treatment.
Okay, so hold on. Let's pick on that. You'll get excellent care, but it's not treatment. Yes. Do you think the average guy who walks through the door knows what the difference is between those two words?
I'll explain it.
Okay, so go on. Explain it.
We do more labs than you'll ever get in your standard of care.
Is that good or bad?
That's good. Don't you want more info on yourself as a patient?
Do you have more info on yourself, or is it just is that information being given back?
We'll give them their labs.
Okay.
That's the thing about not being like AMC. We can give you a copy of your lab. Whatever you want, you get it.
Right. And now let's say you give those labs back to the patient. how do you know that they make sense to the patient? Are you telling me every single time someone sits and explains those labs back to them?
NP or a PI, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And so what we have now is a situation where every single time, every single patient who walks through the door has every single lab.
If they want.
See?
Not every. We offer it to everyone. Only let
So-
few choose.
But that's my point.
Yeah.
So can you truly ensure that there's informed consent, or that people want to be part of the study and are willing to take the risk? So the informed consent is of the risk, not of the actual information.
It's both.
You just admitted that they may not. Most people don't want to see their labs and have them explained to them.
Most like the option, but then they don't take advantage of it.
And that's my point. So can you truly be informed if you don't know?
Can you truly be informed if you don't know? Yeah, you're informed of your opportunity to take part of this option.
Sure. So you have that information, but do you have information of the actual labs? Because you start with the premise.
If it's abnormal, we tell them every time.
Okay.
time.
And
Like,
if it's
hey,
not,
your cortisol's high, we gotta do this test now. They know, and then if they need more explanation, okay, Jaime, come in here and tell them like what this means.
okay.
Yeah.
So what we have is a scenario where you're saying that every abnormal test, we're going to tell you more. Are there a bunch of questions and comments?
One, Stefan.
What is Stefan saying?
As a recruitment professional, here, let's put it on the.
Yeah.
Whoa, you're gone, Darshan.
I'm still here.
How do we
okay.
know? It's philosophical. I
now
don't know
with
you're there.
Okay, I thought I was just like kicked
professional,
out.
Everything is about setting the expectations in a clear way and in layman's terms that the patient can understand. For me, the idea of recruitment is to provide all possible data and information possible for someone to make their own informed decision. Removing coercion is as simple as not offering your own opinion or ideals on the matter at hand.
Ooh, put that back up. Hold on. Let's see if people
Stefan.
agree. Removing coercion is as simple as not offering your own opinion or ideals on the matter. Would you agree with that statement?
I don't agree with the last part. I think
Okay.
if you're a professional in the space, like you're a professional, clinical research professional, certainly if you're a nurse practitioner or a physician,
Uh-huh.
you can and you should offer your own opinion. That's what you do. You say, hey, here's a study. Let's say it's for arthritis. Okay.
Yeah.
Here's study. Here's standard of treatment. Here's some alternatives that we don't do, but they do it over there. You can tell them. You also have surgery. You also have injections. You have this study. You have another study. In my opinion, I think these two things are good. We can maybe, after a discussion, we agree this one's maybe not ideal for you, and this is why. That's all opinion. All of it's opinion.
So I'll tell you my experience. So my mom was in the hospital at one point, and I went in with her. I'm a pharmacist. I've had, at that point, I was working in the pharmacy in the same hospital when that was happening. And the pharmacy student or whatever came in, and they were trying to explain the meds and stuff like that. And I, on one hand, logically, I understood the words, but I can tell you that I was under so much stress with my mom being where she was that I couldn't process those words. So even though the information was given, I'm not sure how much I understood at that moment.
And you're a pharmacist attorney.
I'm a pharmacist, exactly, in the space.
Mm-hmm.
So my question is, can you truly get to a point where you have true informed consent? And I'm not saying, I think informed consent is in many ways an idyllic situation. It's something you aim for. It's not something that you can necessarily go checked off.
Yeah,
and it's especially not something.
I agree with you there. I agree with you. The way you're framing it is like from a lawyer perspective, right? Where you're looking for holes.
Right.
But like from a practical perspective, you can achieve it. But that's where the issues turn into when it becomes like the holes. And that's why.
Exactly.
But that's all you see because that's all you deal with. And then I almost never deal with that. So
right.
I never see it.
All I see are those issues because those are what times I get the calls.
Yeah.
But that's just one of the issues. Another one that's coming up, truly informed consent, and it wasn't part of this discussion, and this is not what informed consent means. But I'll pick another one. And I forget which clinical trial, but some sponsor just got picked out for not disclosing clinical trial results. Do sponsors have a responsibility to tell patients, especially study subjects, of the results of a clinical trial? And if so, what level of information do you have to provide? So I've done this for a global company where I'd set up a transparency program for them. But the question is, you've got informed consent. Do you owe that responsibility to come back to them after the fact? And can you just put it onto a public website like what the EMA wants? Or do you have a responsibility to go, you know what, PI, here's the 6 folders for the 6 different patients, give it to them. Or you take it the next step further and go, you know what, here is a database. They can each log in, see their information, see how it connects to how the other patients performed, and understand how they connect or compare to the other patients. What is the level of transparency that you need in clinical research? And is not giving that information a type of the word's not fraud, and I'm not sure that's fair to use, but is it a type of lack of transparency?
Yes, I mean it is. Now the question is, should they, and then legally can they give those information out? But
so you can after the fact. In fact, the EMA requires it, but it's usually done up to 1 year after the end of the study.
okay. Well, here, I mean, all of our patients ask, "Will I know afterwards what I was on?" We always say no. We can try to ask, but most of the time, it's not. They're not going to do it. If they do, it's after the study's over and all the data's clean. You won't even
Correct.
care anymore at that point. It's when it's released, you know.
But yeah, I think, but that's, you kind of have to keep it that way, right? Even the sponsor sometimes typically won't know,
Right.
because it would unblind the study.
Right.
I've had issues around DSMBs and the like. It's always interesting because DSMBs are doing their own thing on top of everything else, and IRBs are doing their own thing, and sometimes the IRB can be in conflict with the DSMB about what disclosure can be made, blah 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 blah.
And sometimes IRB can own sites.
Well, I don't think the IRB owns the site.
No, they do.
I think the parent company for the IRB owns the site. Are you aware?
Okay, whatever shell game they're trying to play, the IRB. Come on, Darshan.
Oh, come on. Yeah. So wait, are you saying that if you're in the clinical research world and you own one company and you have that domain expertise, you should not?
Don't make me get a turn on you, Darshan. If you're regulated by the OHRP, your main stakeholders that you're taking care of, your only ones, are patients. That's what you're
okay. Doing. I'm with you. Go on.
That's it. There's nothing else.
So let's assume
no
you're
further questions, Your Honor. I'm done.
So you're conceding, you're agreeing that should that company be allowed to make money?
Of course they should.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how there are 2 ways you can make money, right? Daily operations or sale.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. So in that scenario, let's assume daily operations, they're doing whatever they can. So they're going to look at selling. So what types of companies can a IRB be sold to?
Private equity.
Okay, so we're agreeing private equity. Are we now saying that
just based on reality? That's what.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with you. I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm agreeing with you. So now the private equity company.
I didn't say that's okay. I just said that's what's happening.
Okay, so what is okay? Let's ask you that question.
I don't know what's okay, because OHRP, right? Isn't OHRP still in charge of these IRBs? Like all of them?
Sure. OHRP, AHRP, yeah.
So they have really strict rules about what the company can or can't do. They probably found loopholes. You know, they hired an army of Darshans to figure out, okay, well, did you hear about the pharma does this too? They try to like make deals with the Native American tribe so they can get sued. Like,
so first of all, you don't have the facts right. You're just sort of like mixing things together. You're talking about
the right track. I'm on the right track.
Okay.
They try.
I'm gonna start. Let's pick one subject at a time.
IRBs. Should IRBs? The question on my other live stream today with Brad and Fox. Actually, I wish you were on it.
Yeah, so, call me.
The question was, should maybe it was WCG. One of them, there were rumors they were going to go public, and instead they went PE route. Mm-hmm. And then I brought up this OHRP. Maybe they don't allow them because once you go public, your primary responsibilities to your shareholders no longer, and you could argue it's no longer to patients at that point.
So no,
which defeats the purpose of the.
No, I don't think that's like, I don't think you can. A company can be told what their ownership structure should look like. That's extremely unusual, if not impossible. What they can be told, there are a couple of there are examples where that is not true, and I'll give you an example. For example, there are requirements in many states, in some states, that pharmacies can only be owned by pharmacists, and law firms can only be owned by lawyers. So your position around that makes conceptual sense, but it doesn't translate into practice and clinical research. Outside those very specific professional areas, you can't tell a company that we won't allow you to be owned by XYZ organization. As long as I can meet the requirements that OHARP, AHARP, whatever has put out, there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to be owned by them. Now, that doesn't mean that you get special dispensation, but it does mean that as long as you follow the rules, everyone's subject to the same rules.
Well, also doesn't mean you're immune from industry scrutiny and
100%.
possible changes to the regulations that should something happen. Should they be the next guest on the Fraud Pod?
I think it'd be fun to have them on the Fraud Pod.
They won't come on. None of these guys. Not. I mean, it's not just WCG. It's like they're the top 2 or 3.
Yeah, but I think in the end, my experience, I would say 85% of the people I've ever worked with, maybe even higher than that, probably higher than that, are people who are trying to do good. They're in this business to help people.
Yeah.
And
me too. I see the same.
Yeah. I'm surprised I'm saying 85. I'd probably go higher than that. People make mistakes. People make oversights. People prioritize the wrong thing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But probably that. So I don't think people who work for IRBs are necessarily going, oh, good, I've got money. Now I'm going to be evil.
It's not even the workers. The workers are not. It's the... I mean, I don't even think the executive teams are evil.
Right.
I just think they've gotten away from their core competency for money.
So that's an interesting idea. So your position, if you will, is that there needs to be some type of retraining for executives to bring them back to what is day-to-day operation. So what you're really suggesting is a undercover boss, but for the boss.
That would be so cool, man. What I'm suggesting is like the IRBs were put in place to be a watchdog for patients, right?
Yeah.
Okay, they're doing that. They're checking the boxes.
But wouldn't you say that's true for sites as well?
Sites are... I went on the live stream earlier and said we're the last patient advocates. The IRBs
so if
are
that's
not patient
true,
advocates.
If that's true, then why should sites be able to be bought out by other sites who may be PE owned and have the same exact conflict that you're describing?
They're allowed to. I mean, because the sites are the patient advocates, like unofficially. The official patient advocate is supposed to be the IRB.
Well, I'm not sure that's true. I mean, in the end, the PI is responsible.
And then the PI is responsible for the safety of the patients. Yeah.
Yeah. So then I would say
being an advocate is different, though.
But
so I have to fight for almost every other patient to be randomized.
Who's more responsible? The person who's actually officially responsible, or the one who's supposed to look out for the good? The IRB's supposed to look out.
It's different things. So the PI is the safety, the IRB is the ethics.
I would argue that the PI is both.
Like, sure, the PI is both. Yeah.
So then, if that's true, then the argument doesn't. You kind of have to keep it consistent.
Then the PI should be the one
that sites cannot be owned by PE companies. Then you can never sell to IQVIA.
But you can replace the PI with another PI, and
you'd have the same exact conflict all over again.
As long as they're checking the boxes, yeah.
So that's my point.
What I'm talking about advocacy, though, it's like different from what you're thinking.
Okay.
Not every other. That's an exaggeration. In every study, if we enroll 10 people, at least 3 of those patients I had to fight for. Like, go up the ladder and say, you guys want to screen fail this patient? They belong in the study. They're quick to screen fail. They want pristine patients that don't exist. I'm like, look, this patient belongs in the study. If it's like an IRB owned site or like some conglomerate that owned it, no one's fighting for the patients anymore. You lose some of that patient advocacy. You retain that checkbox. Let's do the minimum. Keep them alive. Yes.
Mhm.
keep them like out of the hospital.
Mhm.
Yes, but like the extra mile, man, that's like what true advocacy is in my book.
See, that's interesting. What you call advocacy, I would argue, is not
Fraud.
necessarily this.
Fraud.
Yeah, I'm trying to not use words like that. No, but I mean, what
It's
you're
not
saying is
fraud.
they don't fit into the inclusion exclusion criteria as described. You're
Thank
saying
you.
it should be a deviation from
No,
those inclusion exclusions.
they fit.
Okay.
On the surface level, the default is they don't fit. But they're not
What is the
considering
difference?
all the nuances that go into it. These are
Give me an
not like
example.
this is not pieces of paper.
Give me an example.
One example recently was someone dosing on Wellbutrin. Okay.
Okay, sure.
They're taking 300 milligram, but it's 150 BID.
Uh-huh.
So we documented that. When they told the central rater, not us, the central rater, they told them, and they admitted they were nervous during the interview, and they also admitted there was not good rapport between the Harvard trained person and the patient. The patient actually complained to us later about this person. They were yawning and all that, but take that aside. No good rapport. They were nervous. They told him I'd take 150, but she was referring to one pill.
Right.
So rather than them exploring further, they say, hey, you have to screen fail this patient because they're not taking the minimum of 300. And I say, wait a minute. If it wasn't me there, though, or like trained coordinators, they'd be like, all right, less work for me, screen fill. But no, I got to go fight, bark up the ladder. Look, here's the pharmacy records. Look at this. Like, this patient belongs. And they're still trying to fight it.
So what did the inclusion criteria say specifically?
Well, it's a bunch of antidepressants, but if it's Wellbutrin, it needs to be 300 a day.
A day. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So and the patient was on 150 BID and did
Yep.
not disclose that properly.
Yes.
So what you're saying is, as you said, on paper, that information was not communicated properly. Whose responsibility is that?
Well, they took it out of our hands and put it in the central rater's hands. So we documented it in our source. They didn't believe us because we
Okay.
didn't have the pharmacy records yet, and so they took their vendor's word for it over ours.
Right.
Any other site, like owned by Amazon or whatever, Amazon doesn't own sites, but whatever the case may be, another
Let me ask
coordinator's
you
like,
this.
yeah, I got 50 more to screen fail. It's not worth even the extra email.
Right. Right.
So what I'm saying is like that's patient advocacy because what happens to this patient? They fall through the cracks because of some nuance
But you just
that
admitted
nobody.
it's not treatment. So why is that advocacy?
Well, it's an alternative that was incorrect, improperly taken away from them.
But an alternative to what? To treatment?
To treatment, yeah, they
Standard
can
of
get
care.
another treatment, but their standard of care is not working.
But so what you're admitting is we have a standard of care and then a question mark,
Right,
correct?
right.
And you're saying taking away a question mark is taking away an option.
It's taking away an option.
Right.
Unfairly.
But is standard of care the only option? Standard of care is one level. They're always below standard of care. There are multiple additional
Yes, of course,
options,
alternative treatment options,
which
yes.
are correct.
But the
which would be
patient
considered.
wanted to do this.
Right.
And some schmuck
But-
from Harvard wanted to take that away because they don't want to dig deeper.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
at other sites, a schmuck from that site would say, well, tough shit, Mary Jane. That's you gotta go do something else.
So
You
here's my
ain't gotta
question. to
get
you.
home, but you gotta get away from here.
So are you seeing
That's advocacy to me, man.
I disagree with you. I don't think that's. I think that's because I think you have a vested interest. To me, advocacy
I
would
do.
mean purely for them. You are very much vested in the outcome of this. To me, there's a big difference between those two.
Yeah.
On the other
fair
hand-
enough. Fair enough.
On the other hand, I think you raise a really interesting question, which
But
is
they're also on the same page. Like they don't want to not be in the study at this moment. They want that choice for themselves, not some schmuck at Harvard to make.
that's fair. That's fair, but that's not advocacy. Still, I think
Okay.
that is,
That's fighting for you. We'll fight for you. We're your
and that I
attorney.
think that's great. I'm not taking away from the fact. Maybe advocacy is a good word. Maybe it is advocacy because you're advocating for them, but that doesn't make it Maybe it's not altruistic, but it is
I
still
didn't say
advocacy.
that. Yeah, we
Okay,
have
that's fair.
mutually aligned incentives, like mutually aligned reasons, me and the
Yeah, I'm with
patient,
you.
to get them in. And but if you take us away, right? Who
Yeah,
like what's left? It's the patient. The
yeah.
IRB is not going to fight for this patient. Are you
No,
kidding
and you
me?
wouldn't expect them to.
Yeah, yeah,
But no, your point's well made. The part that I think is interesting, and I know you got to go pretty soon, but
yeah. I got Zoom. Creo, if you're watching, I'll be on the Zoom right now. I know Stephanie watches.
so here's what I'm going to say in a second. I think the next time we come on, we should talk about what these large pharmacies as sites
Mm,
are going to look like. Because we all know
mm.
CVS got out of the business. I just read somewhere Walgreens doesn't act. I think they said something like Walgreens only had 8 different studies they've done. All I know
I
is
got
basically
more
what they're
in
doing.
12 months at Yuma Clinical Trials than they did.
And well, I assume they have more patients in their
Yeah,
studies. I hope
they
so.
didn't enroll more.
I don't know. But I thought that was fascinating because I would have thought there'd be a lot more, right?
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, I
if you're
hope
Walgreens.
like Walgreens. I hope I'm not like rooting against them. I hope they do well. Like they can do well.
Yeah, but I think that the interesting thing was something you said right after that, which is what happens if Amazon owns sites or becomes the next Walgreens? So PillPack
Yeah,
gets into the clinical research
there you
business.
go. Yeah, yeah. Or that, or more likely, or maybe at the same time, large health systems start doing research, right? And
Oh, they
then
already are.
they
I mean,
are, but like only them. Like every community, only a large health system, and then research is integrated. I mean, you lose some of this like maybe it's better at the end of the day. Like if the ends justify the means, maybe there's more patients you can reach, but more will fall through the cracks too. I don't know, man. I think there's room for both, like small and large. And
oh, 100%. I think that's the beauty of it. It's like small and large CROs. I think they've served different
yeah,
functions.
yeah.
The large ones you want for like a global study, but the small ones, they're often specialists. In the same way, I think a Yuma, for example, like you just mentioned, you went and fought for that patient. And I think that's
Almost
great.
every study you have to do it a few times. Like it's become a
Right,
joke with the coordinators. Like
right,
I haven't done it this week. You know what's going on?
right. But I think the flip side of that is, oh, we've got Kilna saying, in terms of advocacy, in a pediatric study, an inclusion criterion is that the mom should be 18 and up. The mom is 17. Other than the mother's age, the patient qualifies. Does that mean the patient can't participate? Think Belmont report. I would argue that there are clear inclusion exclusion criteria. I would argue if the inclusion criteria is 18 and above, yeah. I don't like it, but those are the facts. Um, Now you might argue that the it's applicable for a deviation, and I think that's fair. That's a fair argument to make. But a strict reading of the rules, that's what it is.
Hmm.
I'm a bit of a purist, as you can tell.
I think my meeting was canceled, so we don't need to rush anymore. But I like bringing it. I tried to click the Zoom and it's said invalid. So I don't know. Korea, if you're watching, come on. We can do it like publicly. I like having you on because you force to think, right? Like you force us to think, and then hopefully we're forcing you to see another perspective too that you're not used to seeing
I
as
lo-
well.
no, just to be clear, I see 100% of your perspective because I've also negotiated for sites. I do it all the time. I do
Ah,
it
you're
more often for sites than anything else.
advocate.
100% I'm a site advocate,
Ah,
but I
there.
also think I think that people forget that being a site advocate also means putting a mirror to the site so that they know
Of course,
what the other side's thinking.
the sites are far from angels,
And
right?
that's my point. But
Yeah.
I think I had a conversation with Edie, and you know Edie.
Oh yeah.
So Edie and I have this conversation all the time where she'll go like, "Well, this is the perspective of the site," and I go, "I agree with you, but here's the other side from the sponsor perspective." And Edie's amazing at the site perspective. And shout out to Edie. But the
Shout out to Edie.
Yeah, but the point being that conversation, that perspective, she goes, "Oh yeah, this is an interesting perspective. I'm glad you raised it." And we're always learning from each other, isn't it? So I to me, I'm lucky to bring have those perspectives, and I'm lucky and I'm hoping that as part of Fraud Pod, as part of Darshan Talks, as part of the Clinical Trials Guru, we get to have those conversations, and I appreciate you giving me the forum to have that with you.
No, I always love having you on because you stretch my thinking. Um, like we're able to talk out loud through couple different issues there, and kind of get to.
I mean, I think Kilner raised a really interesting comment, right? Thinking, should we be thinking from the perspective of the Belmont report?
In a
As
pediatric
opposed
study, an
to
inclusion criterion is that the mother should be 18 and up. The mother's 17. Other than the mother's age, the patient qualifies. Does that mean the patient can't participate? Yeah. So I would run it up to the sponsor. In that case, I wouldn't argue like aggressively like I do with some of these other
Right.
patients, because that's clearly like
right,
outside of the criteria.
and that's my point.
But sometimes the sponsor will say, "Yeah, well, when is their birthday? Oh, it's okay. Well, okay." Sometimes.
Well, I think justice. That's what Kilner is saying, and I
Well,
think
that's a strong word.
well, that's one of the criteria in the Belmont report. There's non-beneficence, there's justice, and Kilner was the last one. I used to teach bioethics for years, for like 10 years.
It's probably in this book somewhere, but by the time I find it,
I can't remember off the top of my head. Justice, beneficence, and
do you know harm? Oh no, that is beneficence.
hold on. Justice, beneficence. Is it autonomy? I think it's autonomy.
SaveOurSites.com, guys.
There you go.
I hear Kielna's going. I hear Stefan's going. I hear Edie's going. Darshan
Look
might
at
be
that.
going. Darshan.
Darshan is hoping for a sponsor to help me get there.
Respect for persons. That's
there you go. Thank you.
That's the part. You lose this, guys, when you go bigger, when you try to leverage, like you kind of lose this. You can prove that you still have it, but there's a difference between the bare minimum. Everybody knows. Darshan, old school pharmacy. You walk in, the pharmacist knows your kid's birthday. Oh, when is Mary turning 9? Oh, yeah, it's next week, right?
Damn, we've got people coming on. Respect for persons. You got another comment like that.
Yeah, respect for all you guys. Old school versus new school. You go to your pharmacy, old school pharmacy.
Yeah.
Hey, Darshan, little Mike's turning 9 next week, huh? Yeah, awesome. Is he still Little League on the Angels? Yeah, they're doing good. Versus going to Walgreens. What the heck? Who are you? Like, stand in line. Do you want to get this credit card?
Okay, let me ask you this.
Your receipt's like this big.
I think it's CVS first of all.
They're all the same.
CVS's receipts are known to be long. But let me ask you this question: since you raise it, who's your pharmacy?
Mine is Sam's Club.
Okay, so you aren't that much better. You just made a whole pitch for why you want the old school pharmacy.
I don't need the respect. I don't need it. I don't need it from them. I don't. It's fine.
I think you just got called out.
I didn't get called out. If I were a patient that needed one-on-one little like white glove service, I'm not going to Sam's Club. I could care less. I just need my lisinopril. That's it.
And that's where we are. And as someone who's worked in all kinds of pharmacies, like literally, I think I've done like 15 different types of pharmacies, bigger, more. But the point being, most people just want convenience, and most people just want to go in and go out. I'm not looking to have a conversation with my pharmacist. I'm looking to go in.
In a clinical research, it's the same.
Oh yeah, 100%. In my opinion,
I don't.
You don't? Interesting. I think people. So here's what they told us about pharmacy. We went from the model where we want to have that relationship to the patient is now a consumer, and the consumer is always right. And unfortunately, that's not true. The consumer is not always right.
That's true. Big facts.
And any person who works in retail will tell you that the consumer is wrong more often than you can think.
Right.
So it's respect for patients, and I think respect goes both ways. You have to respect, for example, the fact that, and just to be clear, I'm not talking about respect for persons the way the Belmont report describes it. There's actually a very clear definition of what that is. But
hey, you know what, Darshan?
You gotta go.
Starting, it's on Google, so I'm out.
This was
all right, guys.
Awesome seeing you. Catch up with you soon.
Catch you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.